Yes, revolutionary greetings, comrades. My name is Comrade Pejin Odimung. Of course, I'm the co-chair. This is a philosophy and ideology class where we study the philosophy and ideology of Osei Fyodor Kwame Nkrumah. We do this study every Thursday, every Saturday, and we are having also a language study every Tuesday. So on Saturdays, we set aside such discussions for a continental discussion that can aid us towards the unification of Africa into one continental government. That is the aim of Saturday classes. So any topics or any discussion we are having is any discussion that can gear us towards that achieving the one continental government. So we sometimes explore challenges towards that unification. And also sometimes we explore also the opportunities based on that unification. And we try to grow the awareness, or of course spread the awareness of Africans to start discussing the unification of Africa or demanding the unification of Africa at a continental scale so that you can have Africa united government. That's what we do. So on Thursdays, of course, our philosophy is consciencism, which is the philosophy and ideology left by us by Osei Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. We always try to go around the books that he actually wrote, that include the key four books that guide this class that sometimes, of course, we base our discussions on, include that consciencism or consciencism, which is the philosophy. Then you have Africa unification or Africa unite, and you have neocolonialism, the last stages of imperialism. Then we have class struggle in Africa. Those are key pillars books that we as a class always try to explore alternatively during our weekends. I remember there was a last session where we were looking at neocolonialism, the book by Kwame Nkrumah, to try to review the resources of Africa that are in control by foreign powers. And we went along and checked some of the recommendations by Kwame Nkrumah. This is the first time we are tackling class struggle since it started our second phase of consciousness class that started in May. And the Saturday class started in around June or July. So this is the first time we are reviewing a class struggle book, and the topic we picked is elitism, which has actually been expounded and discussed extensively by Kwame Nkrumah in this book. But we will also go along other topics moving forward in future, like the coups. Nkrumah talk about the coups or coup d'etats in Africa in the same book, class struggle. And we'll be having that because based on last year, we saw so many coups in Africa, and we envision that many might happen this year. And therefore, it's our intention to actually study what Nkrumah talked about the coups and try to put in our thinking in regards to that and what is the best solution for Africa moving forward in regards to the coups. So we have a coup discussion that will be coming in anytime soon. Apart from that, we are looking forward to host more conferences, of course, this year, and also try to move into action points and try to bring together many Africans. So as I've said, we have a Tuesday class, that is a language unification class that I am the one who facilitates as a teacher, of course, by profession. I'm a Kiswahili and history teacher, so I do teach Swahili for Africans who are willing to actually learn Swahili for the unification of Africa. So once again, comrades, feel most welcome. I see the presence of Coco, of course, Coco from Lesotho, but currently residing in UK. I see the presence of Abimboli Rinumi, our comrade who is actually from Nigeria. I also see the presence of Hegel Mwash, who is my fellow comrade from Kenya, and also Jody Jones, who have actually introduced herself before to having been coming from Ghana. So yes, comrades, let's start off this discussion. And as per our traditions, what we do is that we read the text, but this time around we'll not be reading and discussing the text as we do in our Thursday class. This time we'll start by reading the ideas and the thinking and opinion of Nkrumah in regards to elitism. Once we are done with that reading, then we'll move forward now to actually start sharing also what do you think in regards to this topic. So comrades, once again, feel most welcome. I'll be requesting Brother Coco to actually lead us in that reading of this text that is shared here, and will also make you calls to Brother Coco in case of anything else so that you can help us. Brother Coco is from Farm Group and also New Pan-African Agenda Group, and he's also a member of Conscientism Study Class. Thank you very much. Brother Coco, feel most welcome, and all comrades in this platform feel most welcome.
Wow, what an honor. Thank you, brother. I will read this text which you have presented on the screen, but I have to apologize because there might be some distractions later on. So, elitism. Elitism is an ideology of the bourgeoisie. It arose during the second half of the 19th century, largely as a result of the work of two Italian sociologists, Wilfredo Pareto and Gaetano Mosca. They wrote at a time when the middle class, which had recently gained political power from the aristocracy, felt in its turn threatened from below by a rapidly growing working class imbued with Marxist ideology. Pareto and Mosca aimed to refute Marx and to deny the possibility of socialist revolution leading to a classless society. Unlike Marx, they maintained that political skill determined who ruled and that society will always be governed by some kind of elite or a combination of elites. In essence, the elitists assert that in practice, the minority always exercises effective power and that the dominant minority can never be controlled by the majority, no matter what so-called democratic institutions are employed. The cohesiveness of elites constitutes their main strength. They are small in relation to the nation as a whole, but they are strong out of proportion to their size. Elitism is an ideology tailor-made to fit capitalism and bourgeois de facto domination in the capitalist society. Furthermore, it intensifies racism since it can be used to subscribe to the myth of racial superiority and inferiority. In recent times, there has been a great revival of interest in the study of elites, and many new elitist theories have been disseminated. It is significant that this development coincides historically with the tremendous upsurge of socialist revolutionary activity in the world. Bourgeois theorists seeking to justify the continuance of capitalism have found it necessary to fall back on elitism. They cannot, by any rational argument, justify the harsh irrationality of capitalism. So they try to show that there will always be a ruling elite and that government is always in the hands of those most fitted to govern. In maintaining this, they evade the reality of the economic class structure and class struggle in capitalist society. Among the basic tenets of elitism is the theory that power breeds power, and that apathy, submissiveness, and deference are qualities of the masses in politics. Democracy has been defined as competition between oligarchies. It has become fashionable to talk of top decision makers and to discuss which group or groups really wield power in a state. Is there a concentration or a diffusion of power? How are political decisions made? Are they made by a ruling elite? Do the masses exercise any measure of indirect power? Or are decisions made by diverse elite groupings? Is it true that governments do not govern, but merely control the machinery of government, being themselves controlled by the hidden hand? Pluralists assert that power is not held by a single elite, but by a mixture of many. power is regarded as cumulative. Wealth, social status, and political power being interwoven. Connected with this view is the idea of elite consensus. That is, the involvement in policy formation of only the most important elite groupings. It was one of the declared aims of the early elitists to demolish the myth of democracy. They set out to show that in so-called democracies, the people or a majority of the people do not in fact rule, but that government is carried out by a narrow elite. They went even further and asserted that participation in government was not a necessary feature of democracy and not in itself an important ideal. There can be no class.
Let's stop there. That reading will form the next part of the steps of elitism. So we'll be reading the next page later, but let's start from that extract. There are key questions that have been brought in this extract, as I will be allowing members to share their thinking, as we always do. The key questions that have been asked here, that one, they are saying that is there a concentration of or a diffusion of power? How are the political decisions made? Are they made by the ruling elite? Do the masses exercise any measure of indirect power? Or are decisions made by diverse elite groupings? If that's true, governments do not govern, but merely control the machinery of government, being themselves controlled by the hidden hand. So yes, comrades, we intend to engage members here to share your thinking and also tell us what do you think about in regards to this topic, and also maybe if you have something to say in regards to whatever have been read here, or decisions have been read here, opinion that have been read here, you're free to do so. So permit me to open the floor for anybody who's willing to come in and start sharing their thinking. This is what you'll be doing. You are free to share what you think is right and what you think in your opinion can work, or what do you think in your opinion. So all thinkings are right as long as they are your personal thinking. They don't form our thinking, but they form your thinking. So the floor is open. Anybody willing to come in to say something about this? Also, maybe to digest or comprehend whatever's been read before here, feel free to do so. Just raise up your hand or kindly unmute yourself and start speaking. Sister Judy, I see your question in the chat. And yeah, we will have to respond to that. Keep the questions coming as we end towards, as we move towards, maybe as we'll be moving towards our class, possibly we may be able to have an answer for that. But anybody who want to come in at this particular moment, feel free.
I have another quick question.
Yes.
He mentioned there was some historical history portion that he mentioned about how, I think it was elitism, how it came about. Am I correct? He mentioned some dates and time. But as he was talking,
Yes,
I was
the first
wondering,
paragraph that is mentioned.
Yeah, I was wondering, how does the whole system of kingdoms and queens and when did that come about? Like historically, because you see a lot of elitism in that, and a lot of the elitism you see in Africa, and in some countries more than others, is surrounding that whole system of having a king and a queen and a royalty. So when did that come about? Was that an African ideology, or was that something that came from the West? When Africans and adopted that. How did that?
Your question is very relevant. But according to the text here, of course, Nkrumah is trying to say that it started in 1848. But what you're raising is very important, that you go back also to a traditional African setup. How was the ruling class actually selected to be the monarchs or whatever the kings Africa, when we are having the monarchy, the chiefs, and whatever, how are we arriving at appointing or selecting the so-called chiefs or assistant chiefs or council of elders or the elders within the society? Was it more of influence with some sort of elitism? Was it about, because if Nkrumah is talking about elitism at some point here, he tried to say that elitism is actually also affected by things to do with there's someone he talks, he mentioned those aspects of elitism. Let me check where he mentioned them. But there's someone is mentioning the aspects of elitism, where he talks of, yes, here, in the third last paragraph, that pluralists assert that power is not held by a single elite, but by a mixture of many. Power is regarded as the cumulative wealth, social status, political power, interwoven. So how actually, as we move along, how are the so-called the chief or the council of elders appointed? Was it based on the wealth or the number of cattle they were having? And did that system work perfectly for the people? Those are questions we need to ponder around as we move along. But as I will say, I don't have exact answer, definite answers. This is a discussion class that is open for anybody to come in and chip in regards to this question. But thank you very much, Sister Judy, for putting that question forward. We'll also be trying to see that before we end this, maybe we might arrive in that decision, or maybe we might have a conclusion or some sort of resolution on that. But let's keep the conversation moving. Anybody who is willing to come in to comment, to share anything, to share their thinking or what they think about this topic or the page that is shared above. Is there something you want to critique, to add on, or just general to give your mind or your thinking? Anybody? Welcome, Senator Morgan Komichi from Zimbabwe. And welcome the King Mauli from Ghana. You're most welcome. Yes, anybody want to come in? As I said, this was an open forum. It's not a lecture.
Yeah, hello?
Yes, proceed, Renumi.
Okay. Yeah, I think, in Africa, Africa has gone through phases of when we were pristine Africans, and when we have the phases of our interaction with other cultures, when they dominated us, and the phases after they've left, and we're trying now to either clone a personality out of our new involvement here and there. At the phases of at where we were pristine Africa, I think elitism has to do with some of blood hereditary. The royalties, the priesthoods, they are all factors of hereditary. What is in the hereditary line, the forefathers handing on to the forefathers, and fathers handing over to the children, and some thrones were betrothed to their heirs, as it were. So, but why we got involved with other cultures, some other means of thrones we're now taught how to snatch thrones, how we can climb our way onto the thrones, how we can forcefully took thrones. These are some of the things we learn, because these were daylight robberies that were demonstrated to us, and some codification could quickly be done in form of enactment of law, and these laws becomes the hearts that push human being around, or rights on us, as it were, because that's all. These are things we started seeing. We started seeing that this is the law that is now as right, as long as you can prove law, as long as you can prove the happenstance with some certain dates or some certain quotation or enactment to back up whatever position you were claiming, then it could be right. So these are the challenges we have. And then going beyond this level, some of us, the informed or enlightened, see that we have a mixture of situations. We need to now look at what is morally right, what is best for us. That's where we're now thinking that. That's where those of us that are Pan-Africanists, we're hoping that there will be a way of us reinventing our culture or reinventing ourselves the best we can. So I think at the level we are in now, as in my opinion. So let me apologize. I'm on the way, so that's where you probably be having some background noise here and there. So I wouldn't be able to say much, so that because of my being in transit. So I just said, let me put in this before I get to the busier part of the road, where the background noise might probably drone my voice. So, all right, I'll stop here for now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Brother Coco, come in.
Thank you. I will also be getting on the road soon. So let me put in a few words or a few thoughts on this. In response to Sister Judy's question, the kings and queens is just one form of governance, and doesn't necessarily come from Africa. It will come from any place where there was surplus or economic activity. The people have a way of choosing their rulers, and most of those will be related to that economic opportunity. You will notice that these systems are hierarchical in nature, or a pyramid sort of, with a few elites at the top, or someone who is a monarchy at the top. Then from the monarchy, then there will be some nobility and members of that nobility, and so and so forth, and then everyone else at the bottom. Then there will be some of those learned individuals who make up the middle class, or the bourgeois, as we are told here. So in Yanis Varoufakis has written a book in which he is making conversations with my daughter. He explains how this has worked or how it has evolved. But most of it has evolved from that economic surplus. It has evolved from the elite wanting to control the economic surplus and using the church or religion as some of those instruments that they keep themselves at the top. By creating religion, they have a way of establishing themselves at the top, because the religion gives them that aura of invincibility, or the aura of them being chosen by God. Or you know what happened with Henry VIII. He was told not to divorce his wife, and instead of listening to the Pope, he decided the Pope should not be above me. The Pope is a man like me, and I am chosen by God. That's what Henry claimed. That's why he chose to form the Church of England. And the Church of England reported to him, and the Church of England has up until now been reporting to the monarchy. Now the monarchy is King Charles here. Before it was Queen Elizabeth. But that is how it works. So the king and queen sort of follow what was then feudalist tendencies, where the king would have lots of land, and there will be some lords who will report to the king. The king can take those lands from them when he wants, but he has a way of controlling them through wealth. Hence, they created that nobility from there. But what then happens from there is that when the king has children, those children then go on to either hold the throne, or if they don't hold the throne, they become the new nobility. So the nobility keeps on expanding, and so forth. And we saw that in Lesotho. What happened in Lesotho is that Moshweshwe, the founding father, was chosen by other tribes. It wasn't just by his tribe, even though in his tribe he came from a royal background. He wasn't, let's say, the paramount chief or the biggest king at the time, but it was in amalgamation of different tribes at the time when they knew that the Infectani wars were starting, that they chose someone who they thought was good enough, had the skills, had the leadership ability to see them through that. And he managed to do that. He managed to do that. He wasn't just a warrior, he was also a diplomat. He was lots of things. Again, from my own clan, where I come from, we were more of Botswana than Basotho, but due to the Infectani wars, we moved from Botswana or the north of South Africa into modern day Lesotho. Our king, the way he was chosen, it was one of those funny ones, in that his uncle, who was then the ruler, was superstitious and had tendencies of oppressing his followers. Then his dad started welcoming all of those who were oppressed by his brother or his cousin, and then he grew in fame, he grew in generosity. They saw that generosity and thought he would be the one to protect us most. So the people, in a way, chose him, even though he was already there by, let's say, force of nature, the fact that he was born from the royal family in a way. But the way the Africans worked was that if I was a king and I had sons, when I go, the eldest son will be the one who inherits the kingdom, the chiefdom, or whatever the clan. Then what happens with the younger ones? The younger ones will break away. And the way they did was they had their own followers. There was what you call the initiation school. It's called the Mopato. And through this Mopato, if I was a chief's son, I go into Mopato with guys my age, the peer groups. So those peer groups, they in the end form the regiment. But when you come of age and you don't get anything within the new chiefdom, then you are at your own advantage to seek new opportunities. So that's why Africans spread across the continent, and that's why we have so many Bantus from western Cameroon all the way up to the south in South Africa and all the way to east in Kenya, because they were moving about looking for opportunities. But people will follow who they chose to follow, which is different from yeah.
Sorry for interrupting you.
Yep.
But thank you for that, of course, brilliant history of trying to link the traditional systems, whether they embrace elitism. But I'd also like to request you in regards to the paragraphs shared, whether do you share the sentiments shared by Nkrumah in regards to elitism in this page, especially where he says that elitism is an ideology tailor-made to fit capitalism and bourgeoisie's de facto domination in a capitalist society.
Good one.
Can I proceed?
Yeah. Thank you for that direction. So where I was going to come to next was the clash of the Western and the African systems of doing things. So even though we had chiefs and queens in Africa, we had more of a communalist arrangement where the king, the people could actually leave the chief, as you have seen. People will follow another chief who was better than the one they lived under, or there were ways in which people could leave the chiefdom. But what happened with the Western one is that it was hierarchical. When you were at the top, you were at the top and you control everything. But the African one is different. We control things. The chief or the king was just there as a custodian of the resources of the people. So that's the difference. But when the Europeans came here, they decided if we can work with these chiefs, that we will create our own elites. In some societies, they actually colluded with the chiefs in those places because those chiefs were bought. Read a lot of the work of Josh Padmore. I'll be happy to share the link with you in which he explains how the British worked. In Lesotho, for instance, they were looking to implement Christianity using the chiefs, but the chiefs didn't have any of that. They did not want to have any of that because they realized that there were rules which clashed with the traditional Lesotho chiefs. So what they did was they used the converts. The new converts to Christianity were the ones they elevated to the top. And through those, they were able to sort of topple the chief system. And that was the idea, to remove the chief system and have a way of implementing colonialism through their own elites. If the chiefs were not cooperatives, they had a way of doing that. So after they left, after colonialism ended, some of those who were elites, they continued in their place as elites. So this is where capitalism comes in. They continue to do the bidding of their former colonial masters. And that is how neo-colonialism came about. That's how it was implemented, because they managed to continue to hold their positions as elites. And it's an incentive for them to continue as elites. As long as capitalism continues, they are guaranteed to be the best or creme de la creme in a society. Hence, it's incumbent on them to continue colluding with the Western countries and doing what they want to do for them to continue protecting them. I hope I've answered.
Before I let you go and allow another member to come in, I'll ask you another one question that is linked to this paragraph. In the second paragraph, in the book shared on the screen, Nkrumah says, in essence, elitists assert that in practice, the minority always exercise effective power, and that the dominant minority can never be controlled by the majority, no matter what so-called democratic institutions are employed. The cohesiveness of elites constitutes their main strength. They are small in relation to the nation as a whole, but they are strong out of proportion to their size. What's your take in regards to that?
On that one, I will encourage people here, when they have time, to follow Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky talks about manufacturing consent, and in manufacturing consent actually unpacks this. But all of this came from Edward Bernays. And Edward Bernays was a propagandist who worked for, was it Roosevelt? But it was during the Second World War when America, they wanted to go into the war, but he had been elected into government on a peace mandate. But he had to somehow manufacture a consent from the people to get that. And that's how Bernays came with this idea that the masses do not have power. It's only a few people, and is in the interest of the whole society that these few individuals are there to control them and do all of these decisions, these important decisions for the people. The people can only take part in the governance process every 4 or 5 years when they choose who rules them. So this is how capitalism works. This is how democracy is a scam, because we go out there to the ballot, we elect government, but then at the end of the day, The decisions are taken by a few individuals who never come back and consult us. Let's take the case of England here. The Conservative Party has been for like 13 years, but in the last 5 years of them, they have had, is it three prime ministers? And most of those prime ministers are elected by registered Conservative Party members. Not everyone elected Sunak or elected Liz Truss. We went to the election and Boris Johnson won the elections, but things didn't go according to how he wanted, and then things changed. It's just an example of how the elites have taken over and the masses have taken the back seat.
Thank you, Comrade. I'll come back to you later. I see Senator Morgan's hand is up. Of course, I wanted to go to him, and I'll have to go to him, but also guiding and requesting that he respond to some of these few issues. One is that aspect that I was asking you in paragraph 2 of this book. And the third one is the paragraph 3 of this book, where elitism is an ideology tailor-made to fit capitalism. And the fourth one is on the paragraph, that's after paragraph 3, paragraph 4. Yeah, paragraph 4, the questions raised there, which include that that one is that democracy has been defined as a competition between oligarchies, that it has become fashionable talk of the top decision maker. And paragraph 5, the second last paragraph, that says that they set out to show that the so-called democracies, the people or a majority of the people do not in fact rule, but that government is carried out by the narrow elites. Having, of course, Senator served as a senator in a parliament in Zimbabwe, were you seeing yourself as part of the elites, or did you actually experience elitism? And what is your response in regards to some of the few issues here Nkrumah is raising? To those who are joining us now, we are trying to actually discuss the first page of this book called Class Struggles in Africa, and we'll be moving to the second page very shortly after we're done with this first part. But Senator, kindly come in. We are not crucifying you, we are asking you for your thinking.
No, thank you much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Let me take this opportunity to put my views guided by what Father Kwame Nkrumah wrote some years back. I think for us to have a clear picture, to compare what we used to do, it should be before colonization. The form of governance we used to run before colonization under the monarch or under the chiefs, but particularly the chiefs, that says how Africans were governing themselves. That was the time when the systems that were running Africa were purely African in nature, from cultural point of view, originality and identity. Before colonization, with the pure system of God, the colonizers came, missionaries came in.
I suspect the senator might be experiencing some network problem that is always common in Zimbabwe. But Senator,
yeah, it's always common in Zimbabwe. Network always goes off like that. So the governing structure that we used to have during that time needs to be studied deeply so that we can then compare with the colonization processes. So we should cut off from the time the missionaries came in, because the missionaries came in for a purpose, and they targeted our chiefs, our kings, and they started spoiling them or destroying whatever leadership or some form of governance we used to have. So they targeted these kings and chiefs because they knew that the Africans had a form of governance. So they wanted to destroy it. Coming back to the analysis of Kwame Nkrumah, what he said in that book during that time, it is still in existence right now. It was a deliberate design of leadership through an elitist group to represent the Western world, the interest of the Western world. These elite members of society were educated along the Western ideologies. They were Black people who were academically made whites, who had to change a character, who had to change the language, the way they were moving, the way they were dressing, the way they were talking, to be a white man in a black skin. So they then got the opportunity to form a so-called black government. But simply being a conduit of feathering, of neocolonialism, that strategy by the Western world was established across all African countries or any other colonized state in the world to perpetuate the interest of the Western world. This was brought up after having realized that our forefathers, African fathers, were now fighting for independence and liberation struggles. They knew that after some time they were going to be disconnected from the direct exploitation of all mineral resources, as what they were doing before the War of Liberation in Africa. So they designed a system that they would then further use after the total independence of Africa. Right now, if you go to our government, even though we go through elections, but if you look at the Black majority in African countries live in abject poverty, languish in abject poverty. Whilst a top elite, probably the ruling elite, are the ones that have got access to finance, access to mineral resources, access to farms, access to anything that gives money. If you go back to the systems that were then left by the white colonialists in Africa, there were very few white people in every Black and every African country, in the range of 200 to 300,000 people. So these 300,000 people used to live in a certain governing structure or governing system, which we as the Black majority, after attaining our independence, we forgot to destroy. We simply inherited those particular systems that were designed to cater for a few white people, which was very exclusive to the Black majority. We forgot, or we cheated, or we didn't realize. So we fought a war of liberation. We then won the war of liberation. We were managed by, if we were under the British system, we were managed by the British government to take power. So the British government was making sure that the system that they designed under their white rule was not going to be destroyed by us. If you were a French colony, the same thing happened. So we perpetuated the systems of oppression that were used by the white minority. It is not Black to Black oppression. So as we start right now, we need to say, okay, having realized this, what should we do? How can we design governance systems that are inclusive of the Black majority? Because right now it's exclusive. That's why 90% of the African people are poor. We need now to, as we start, as we discuss, let's find ways of developing systems that would, because if you go back to the old systems of chieftainship, there was some form of inclusivity. There was some form of every chief was responsible for the vulnerable people in his society. If you check every African country from Cape to Cairo to the Western Africa, there was some form of which was being used by Blacks to cater for the vulnerable, such as those ones that were disabled, those ones that were orphans, those ones that were, they had no wives, they had no women, they had no men, who had no cattle, we had no plows. There was a form of a system that was used across Africa, which was taking care of these people, such that after every rainy season, no black family would go starving. They with our own system that we used to do. Let's go back to those systems and see how can we modernize them. We know they could be a cake, but we can modernize them. We can get certain principles, but the principles are still valid. The methods and the mechanics could have changed, but the principles are still valid. Let's go back to those principles and see how we can develop the system which would be, in my description, Afrocentric. So we need to look at these things. So Father Ngwambe Nkrumah, in my view, was very correct. We must be guided by that principle. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Before I let you go, Senator, I'll ask two questions that need either yes or no answer. One, being in the political systems or being in the political race and political positions, so you affirm and confirm that African politicians are actually the elites. Majority.
Especially those leadership that are in the ruling party. They're actually elite because they got access to all the resources. They live a certain class of life which is very different from the general population in their countries.
Okay, thank you. The last question will be Nkrumah's assertion here that governments do not govern, but merely control the machinery of government, being themselves controlled by the hidden hand. Is that true to your own thinking?
That is 100% true. The African governments right now are being managed from the Western former colonizers, IMF and World Bank. These are the institutions that run African countries, America, the Europe, and the Britain, and the IMF and World Bank. These are the authorities that decide the direction of an African countries. That's why we're unable to make use of our natural resources, because African leaders were not in charge of our own resources. We are managed by the whims of the former colonizers.
Thanks. I'll request somebody who has joined us by the name Navigate to actually put his actual name. Navigate. Can you put for us your actual real name? Then before I want to take one person who want to comment on this, then we'll move to the next page. Who is willing to connect and actually comment on this paragraph here and whether to give their opinions? If you are willing, can you let me know so that you can be given some 5 minutes to share this, and then you move to the next page. Anybody? Yes. Oh, sorry. I wanted to go to you, Father Waiguru. Before I give you, yes, I want to refer you to some few questions as you lead to this. Of course, Brother Coco talked about the religion, which brought into actually part of forming the elite. You have been trained in Catholic, and you become a father, and not a father in the church. I know so many history we've talked about how you became a father, feeling regarding fathership or father. That's my question to you. Even in the church level, was the leadership of the church like father and the rest? Only, and do you think that the church gospel associated with elitism or not? And how do you see that happening? Yes, Father Waiguru, can you come in?
Thank you. I hope you're getting me. It is a great honor to be in this class, in this forum. And I'm so happy and glad to have listened to the previous great minds, the people who have spoken their area. And I strongly believe that this conversation is going on at the right time. Thank you, my comrade, for those questions. Yeah, my background is on church and religion. And I'll just go straight to the point and say, when I'm coming in, I am coming into this forum, and the reason why I feel part and parcel of this conversation because of what happened to me while I was in Haiti. I had gone for a mission to evangelize in Haiti, which is uh, I can say the poorest nation in the world. Maybe it could be among, but for me, it's the poorest. And I realized that one of the biggest thing there was religion. Like every home that does not have any food, that they live for with handouts, they can stay for days without any meal. But you get into their house, they are only talking about the church, about what they have, all Bibles, French Bibles in French, in English, in Creole, in all those. And this is what made me ask and start questioning myself on the role of religion in impoverishing or making the black people poor. And so I came up to a conclusion and even started writing some articles on uh, the reason why Africa is poor. And I realized that the religion, especially in a way, Christianity has played a very, very big role. I'm talking this as a priest, and even today I was preparing myself for tomorrow's sermon. I'll be preaching the church tomorrow, but I tell people my role or my whatever I'm doing still in the church is not to tell people about the golden houses, places in heaven, because first of all, that was, I believe, that's a fraud, that's a scam to to take the people's mind from here all the way to tell them that you don't have to mind, just believe in the beatitude. Blessed are the poor. That's the message of the colonizer to Africa. Blessed are the poor, you will see God. Blessed are the persecuted. Blessed are, you see, those were some of the languages the colonizer used, and he really succeeded in capturing our minds. And so like I want now to say categorically, I hope the people in the forum uh, are, are strong enough to understand and to get some point here that from originally the origin of Christianity, because sometimes we are always told that Catholicism, not even Christianity, Catholicism was begun by Christ himself. But from my studies, as you said, Comrade Pigeon, I've gone through the formation in the seminaries. I had my degree from Urbaniana University in Rome, and I've done several missions in the US. But I came to understand and to know the secret, some secrets that it's time for us now to give them to share with the world. That there is something that happened in 325 at a place called Nicaea. That is, we have the Council of Nicaea, where we have the creed. I'm very sure everybody here has one day, in one way or another, uh, said the profession of faith. I believe in God and all this. So this was something that was created by some men who sat on a table and came up with something to rule the world. Their mission was to control the world. And so they came up with four theories that they believe if we share, if we take all these things to the people all over the world, we will be very powerful. We will control them. We will be able to, to get whatever we want without violence. We will be able to get their lands, their minerals, their water, everything, just by giving them these four things. And the four things are, they had to create a heaven. So that's why we are always told, don't worry, you don't need to cling onto your land, because this is not your place. Your place is in heaven. You're just passing by. So they created a heaven so that they can tell you, don't do very much, don't be so concerned on your accusation of any land. Then the other issue they created was the issue of judgment. And so this also helped them because all the evils they were doing, it was not for us to judge. So a colonizer would come, kill, rape, and all do this, but you were already told that it is not yours to judge. Everybody will kneel on the last day, and you'll be judged. So that one, and it was not so in our African traditions. We believe, like in the Kikuyu community, we say wa the orihagerwode, that whatever you do here on earth, you have to pay for it almost instantly. But for them, they made sure that they postpone the judgment or your reparation until your last day of judgment. So they created a heaven, they created a judgment, and then when after the judgment, you have to if you are evil, then you go to hell. That means, so they also created a hell, and they put somebody in charge of hell who was Satan. So I think they were able to use those four things, that is heaven, judgment, hell, and Satan, to control the world, and that's what they have done. And that's why even I want to disagree with the statements that we have been using about that when Africa became independent. For me, I believe we are yet we are yet to Huru. We are yet to get independent. Why? Because like Kenya, for example, these people, the colonizers, they first of all got our forefather, President Kenyatta, and took him and like oriented him. They took him through their European way of ruling. So it's like they were preparing their own, and so that's why for him, when they just gave him the mantle and the constitution and everything. So he continued to rule as if they were the ones, but now in a dark skin, as many have used. And what for me make me realize that nothing really significant happened is because we had schools, we had hospitals that were being run by the colonizers, by the Wazungus. But did anything stop? So the schools that were being run by the colonizers in the name of the church, and the hospitals, they continued. And even the people who are already in custody in those detention camps, in all these, uh, we don't have like any record that these people were really celebrated the independence. So I want to submit that for me, we have been giving narratives, we have been sharing about what happened during those days. But I believe we are so lucky as the people of this generation, led by people like Pigeon, that this is the time that God want to really liberate us. We want to have a new birth of Africa. And that's why we saw from, I think, the year ago, last year, but one, the issue of the corona pandemic, it was bringing a new swift in the world. We see how Africa stood very strong. And then immediately after the corona, we saw big world icon foreign, including our own, was he called Desmond Tutu. We saw the fall of the Queen dying. We saw those great icons in the world. It was like to tell us now it is time for us now to be fully independent, to control our education system, to control what internet, our technology, that is even the television network, the programs we watch. You realize in every country in Africa, the majority of the things we watch are Europeans, Eurocentric. And our education system is not to help us, as somebody there mentioned. It is just to capture your mind and to take you to make you think in a certain way. So I think it is a high time now, as a group, we are able now to have a conversation, not just as Kenyans, but as Africans, to speak about it. I have been privileged to talk to several groups and organizations. We were happy to host Gren from UK. I also am being involved with some other groups by the name Traverse Culture, of African Americans coming to Africa to invest here and grow, and so that we can unite and realize and ask ourselves, how can we be independent? So my submission for tonight is we are yet to be independent, but we are on the right track.
Thank you, Father. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, thank you very much. You are the kind of fathers we need. And the gospel you are preaching is the kind of gospels we need in those churches. If that is the gospel to be preached, then you will not bring down the churches. We will actually build more of them to preach such gospels. So we do appreciate your submission, and we really appreciate your presence. Permit me to go to the person non-navigate before I move to the next page. You have been raising your hand, and can you formally introduce yourself to us, whether you navigate who, so that you can be able to know, and then proceed to your submission. Welcome, comrade.
Thank you very much. My name is Navigate, and my middle initial is M, which stands for more, and my last name is Freely. So my name is Navigate More Freely. I see all the names, of all the participants here tonight. Their names are here as well, and that's exactly what I'm going to call them. With the names that they have here. Now, we're stepping on lots of subjects here, and I would like to say that we should be more independent in our thinking as far as defining our reality. Why should we accept the definition of elitism from the invaders? Why should we accept the word colonizer from the invaders? They describe in themselves. We have the cognitive ability to define reality for ourselves. We should all, try to navigate, our minds more freely. But of course, I call them those who take and lie about everything that's important to African people, Black people in this world. They stole everything that they have from Black people, including our minds. They're the ones who forced our foreparents, to worship and believe in a image of a dead white man on a cross as God. They the one that raped and pillaged, us, and invaded our lands, and divided our lands, for their benefit. So why should we, but many of us, we have not cognitively overcome the social engineering that's been placed upon us, for centuries. So therefore, we still cling, to their values instead of, seeing reality, for ourselves, which we have the ability to do. So, it's just like a rocket ship, leaving the planet Earth. In order for that heavy rocket ship, to leave Earth, it has booster rockets and it has tremendous power to lift it off the ground, and it takes plenty of power, to push it through the sky, and once it breaks through the Earth's atmosphere into orbit, then, it can navigate freely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll call the navigator. You, of course, you're not the
No, that is not my name. Is not Navigator. Everybody is a navigator. My name is Navigate.
Okay, thank you, Navigate.
Thank you.
That's wonderful submission. So I would like us to go to Adon. We will be discussing this. I wanted us to have the general readings because we're having almost 30 minutes to go. Our Brother Cook, I want to get what you want to say. Can they come in?
I am really encouraged by the submissions which I've had from several of the speakers here, but all of them are there to confirm what Dr. Nkrumah had observed. I'm also happy that none of them received what Dr. Nkrumah had seen, and I also encourage people to read White Malice. White Malice, they bred or they mentored Mobutu, Kasavubu, and the others in Congo to undermine Lumumba. And through Mobutu, he managed to ransack Congo. I think that answers again your question on how was that system meant to support capitalism, because that was what was happening in the Congo. They wanted American interests. They wanted to plunder the Congo for themselves, not for the Congolese, not for the Africans. And that continues to date. So the current president of Congo, even though his father was not ruling at the time, he was one of those students who got the scholarship from the CIA. And as you can see, it came from him into the son. The same thing, you see that the Kabila was there fighting for a while, but after Kabila left, his son came in. It's that system, which is very hard to break. And I see it happening again in Uganda, where Museveni wants to pass on to his son. But majority of the elitism which we had, as Senator Komichi has said, came from education. I think Father also said that our own elder, Jomo Kenyatta, was educated in the West. Mandela was sent to prison for 27 years. He came back. We haven't got anything after independence except the whole of political freedom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Comrade. I want us to move forward. And yes, the last part of this page that says there can be no class within a class, but there are elites within a class. So it means if there is those so-called the class of the poor and the rich, even within the poor, there are elites within the poor class, if that is to be said. And even within the rich, there are also elites within the rich class. Elites arise from the development and formation of a class. In Europe, the broad class pattern is as follows. There are the traditional aristocracy, which were based on land and titles. Then there was permit me to go to the next page. If you allow me, just permit me to go to the next page. Okay, let me continue sharing this. So, as it says, sorry for that. Let me just continue with this. Yes, I'm saying there were, let's check first of all in that aspect, that there cannot be a class within a class, but there can be elites within a class. Is that true? Is that answer to what some of us think is possible? Is there elites also within the, if we have to talk of class, within the poor class and the rich class, there are still elites that exist. But it can't be true. I don't know what people think about this, but yes, you're free to share your thinking in regards to this. But let me check to the next subject that I want to move forward to. So there's the first class, which is the traditional aristocrats. Then there's this second class of elites who are actually, can you see my new screen? Which talks of the middle class?
We can see your screen, brother.
The middle class.
So that's at the bottom, the last paragraph. There can be no class within a class, but there are elites within a class. Is that what your question is?
So that's the only thing you can see. Can you see the second class, the second category?
You stop sharing the screen now, I think.
Okay, let me move to the second category. This category which talks of the middle class. Can you see the middle class?
Yes, we can see the middle class now.
Yeah, no, the middle class are
middle
based on
class.
The first class was based on land. The middle class are based on the money they have. And the working class are based on agriculture and industry and divided into upper and lower working class. Okay, among the middle class, the new aristocracy are proletarians. So this is just an explanation of the types of the classes within the structure, which I will not actually want to move so much into it. But I want to check on this paragraph on the other side of the screen, on the other side of the page, the second paragraph, which says that as a result of colonialism and neocolonialism, there have been comparatively little development on African business elite. In addition, the fact that many newly independent governments tend to concentrate on the public rather than on the private sector of the economy. This has led to small size of African capitalist class. But this was then. Today, there are so many actually of this class that exist in Africa, as you all know and all agree with. But also where I want us to measure our discussion is towards the end of this page, which is the last page of this, so that we can have a discussion on it, where Nkrumah actually talks seriously about this so-called elitism. Let me share that last paragraph so that we can be able to share our thinking in regards to that last paragraph as we come to an end of this class and as we come to share our almost end submission to this class. The last paragraph says that if you start from the second paragraph of that last page, it seems my screen is bringing serious issues today. But let me try to share the last page, if you permit me. Yes, it says, can you see the last page? Where it says, yet it has been held by some elites. Can somebody confirm that? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, screen is on.
Let me read that last page. Yet it has been held by some elites that development of industrial society can be shown as a movement from one class system to a system of elites based on merit, achievements, and achievements. Such a theory falls to the ground in the light of clear evidence of the sharpening of class struggle through the capitalist world. Among elites, opinions differ as to how far elites can be said to be cohesive, conscious, and conspirational. Obviously, it is impossible to measure precisely the influence and decision-making power and the degree of cohesiveness of a particular elite or group of elites. Among the political elite in the developing countries are nationalist leaders, bureaucrats, and intellectuals. Of the members, for example, in the Ghana House of Assembly by that time, in 1954, 29% were school teachers, 17% were members of liberal profession, and among the Legislative Assembly members, 8 territories of the former French West Africa. After 1957 election, 22% were state teachers, 27% were state government officials, and 20% were members of profession. The middle class in developing countries was in the main created by the David educational and administrative system introduced under colonialism. The predominance of intellectuals in the middle class is due in the main to deliberate policies of the colonial power to foster the growth of an intellectuals. If you move further, it says elite associations such as bar association, medical societies, Oddfellows, Freemasonry, Rotary clubs, e.g. emerge with the development of elites. These associations affect the class formation by institutionalizing social differences. The existence of class feeling is shown by the desire to join associations and clubs which are thought to enhance social status. Elitism is basic to the thinking of those who accept class stratification. It is an ingredient of capitalism and is further intensified by racism, which in turn is a result of the group of capitalism and imperialism. The inherent elitism of the ruling class makes them contemptuous of the masses. Elitism is an enemy of socialism and the working class. So we will be coming to an end of this class, and I will still ask members here to kindly share your thinking openly from what you've been reading about elitism and maybe your last thinking towards this subject after we will be coming to an end of this class. So if you want to share your last thinkings in regards to this or your opinion, kindly feel free to unmute yourself or raise up your hands to contribute to this elitism class in Africa. But also as you do this, kindly provide us what do you think is the solution for us to overcome this? How do we overcome the elitism? Or how do we convert the elites to join the revolutionary warfare? Because I know majority of elites are either so conservative or so liberal. They only think about themselves. They are so-called the solipsists who think only about themselves. But is it possible for us to win the elites into the struggle? Of course, I know in the neo-colonialism, Nkrumah talks that the masses must be won into the struggle. But is there a need for us to win the elites into the revolutionary struggle? Or how do we overcome elitism in Africa? So can you feel free to actually unmute yourself and put forth your points? I'll see Uzomeka Eze is here. Eze, can you be able to share something in regards to this topic of discussion today? Eze? Or even Okenga Ukelo from Uganda. Any of you, or even Leonard is here. Judy, if you want to come in, Kelly come in again. And we have other members who have been spoken here. Kelly come in and share what you think. Yes, Father, we permit you to proceed. If there's no hand raised, Father, kindly proceed.
Okay, thank you. On that point, are we able to come together, the elite and the masses? First of all, we ask ourselves, like the panelists, the people we are discussing, where do we fall? Do we fall under the elite, or we fall under the other class of people? I believe anyone here falls under the elite, but we have something unique, something special, that we have been enlightened. We have gone beyond what we learned in school. Because like for me, finishing my A level, is it O level, and then going through like seminary formation, being taught to be like a Roman, because I was being taught in a Roman way to always think like a Roman, act like him, and for over 10 years. That is something huge in somebody's head, and that's why like to go and speak such a conversation in a class or in a room of priests, bishops, it would be very, very almost like hitting a wall, because whatever has been put in the mind has been done for so many years. And so such a person does not know anything, and especially they have been taught that whatever comes from above, you cannot even question. That's where we have the issue like dogmas and doctrines, and I think that has also helped or also helped the colonizer to tell people there are things you don't have to question. So for us to have such a conversation, we have to first of all believe that we are very, very lucky, and almost God chosen, that we are able to get out of that box that we has been put for us. And we understand that there are so many people we were schooling with who are very much, and you can go to start a conversation with them, and the first thing they label you. They say this man, his head has gone mad. Like whatever I discuss with my comrades in the church, they say this man, leave him, he's sick, he's whatever. So that that's the rebel you get when you get enlightened, when you are able now to see beyond what has been taught to us. So on the question, where do we start, what's the solution, what's the way forward, I believe this thing has been happening for a while now. I started hearing on YouTube of people talking about African unity, African independence. I really remember when I was in the US, I could not miss the session by a lady in Kenya called Dr. Mumbi Selaki and others. But now the main question was, and even when I came back to Kenya, I realized there were several other people who had the same mind. But the main challenge is everybody wants to be autonomous. We want to feel ourselves we are the torch bearers. We are the one going to lead, and then there is another group somewhere that is talking almost the same thing we are talking, But we even can't, we always, when we hear people talking about that group, we criticize them. We say, oh, those people, they don't know what they are saying. So for me, I think the way forward is those people who have the network, the link to anyone who has seen the light, who is talking about African Renaissance, who is talking about Ubuntu, who is happy. Last week I was in a session. I had something very, very new to me and unique about Kwanzaa in America. So I think I wish, or anyone who has ever spoken in this way, we can all come together, and I think that will be the beginning of our freedom, our liberty, and that will be the end of the colonizer. But as long as we continue even fighting ourselves, saying this man has a better idea. Like, it was so unfortunate during that last session on another forum like this about Ubuntu, about especially when the discussion was about that Kwanzaa theory, or I didn't get it very well. But you could also hear people in the panel, instead of seeing the way forward, everybody comes with his own point of view. And when somebody else contributes contrary to your view, you start arguing and like having a conflict, instead of realizing that, yes, I see this thing in this perspective, in this view. If somebody else would come in the same panel but have a different view with mine, but we have the same vision, we are moving the same direction, then we should be very, very comfortable. Like that. That's why I think for me, I would be very, very comfortable even in a forum, in a channel where somebody would come and say, hey, excuse me, Father, I think there what about if we take it this way? I'll be very comfortable, and I'll be able to say, yeah, let's hear from your own perspective. So that, I think that's another way, when we understand that there's not only one way of going somewhere, there are different ways, there are different opinions. So if we bring all of these opinions together, and everybody to realize that it's not mine, whatever I think, that's just a small point. Let everybody else come up with his point, and at the end we are going to succeed. We are going to be one, and we are going to end these stories of our forefathers, what they did. They really played a big role, and I was saying they planted the seed of unity, but it had to be buried by the sun. It had to die. Now it's sprouting. Now it's us to shoot, to shoot and to shout the message of liberty. Thank you.
Thank you, Father. We do really appreciate your contribution. Who else want to come in as we are coming towards the end of our class? I think we need to do another session of elitism, but let's see who else want to come in. Can you unmute yourself? Raise up your hand. We still have some few minutes. If you haven't spoken, you feel like there's something you want to share about elitism, kindly feel free.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Ezra, I can hear you.
Okay. What I want to add is that our elites in this our continent are our problem, because they don't really see what we are seeing, and they think that if you start talking about the end of the actual independence of Africa, they think that, especially if you're a youth, they'll say you are unemployed. It's unemployment that is worrying them. So they don't actually listen to the problem. Even if they know, they don't want to act on it, especially our political elites. And our business elites don't think they have any role to play in all these things. And also, our academic elites, what we call the intelligentsia, they feel they don't have any role to play in this. And that is why in our schools, they don't actually teach the young about all these things, because our education, even if we are taught, our education is modeled after the Europeans, but at least within that classroom, chip in something that will turn our minds around. So all these lecturers, all these intelligentsias don't feel that they can do something, they have a role to play in the actual sense of liberation. So I think elites, both political, social, religious, and all of them, all the classes of elites, they are our problems. They don't see what we are seeing. Even if they see, they pretend they do not want to act on them. And the reason I think they behave this way is because they glory in their mingling with our colonizers, the elites of the from the colonizing countries. I think they glory in their collaborations with them, business collaborations and all whatnot. So they don't want to cut that line of association. And then within that elitist class, they are full of rivalry. Just like Father mentioned, that if you put out an opinion, somebody will try to shoot it down. And because he doesn't tally with whatever he has in mind, he will start arguments and the whole thing will just end like that. So I think the most problem we have in Africa is our elites. And if they can buy into the liberation movement, then the work is done halfway. But the way I see them, and none of them is even willing to do this thing. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome, sister. Welcome. Welcome. Indeed, I appreciate your comments and contributions. And I want to also just quickly chime in. Were those who struggle for the independence of Africa consider themselves like elites? Like Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba? Were they the elites of then who actually got converted or baptized, as Father said, that actually then led the process towards that revolutionary path? That's the other question to ponder. But permit me also to go to the next person who hasn't spoken, who is actually willing to speak. The King Mauli and other comrades who are here, can you feel free to speak? We still have 16 minutes to go. Yeah.
That's Leonard speaking.
Yes. Can you proceed?
Okay. Comrades has been
I'm afraid your network is not stable. Victor, Leonard, I'm afraid your network is not stable. We can't hear you well, so kindly work on it then. Find yourself back so that you can contribute. You try to move a bit from where you are to somewhere where the network can be more stable. Anybody else want to come in the meantime?
My brother, may I come in?
Okay. Let's go to Mauli first, Brother Coco.
Or is it? Well,
Mauli, can you proceed before we move back to Brother Coco?
Okay, so for me, where the angle I want to come from is when it comes to the conversation about whether we are really better off. We are far away from this our leaders or the elites handling stuff. We are far away from the Western world when it comes to that. It always comes to the reality that our identity is our problem, because if our elites are really aware of their true or their real identity, they will be able to negotiate their way out of our problem without necessarily kowtowing or bowing to the elite of the Western world. So it comes back to how well do our elites or our politicians, both the business side, the political side, and all form of social leadership, knows themselves. How well do they know themselves in line with their Afrocentric way of seeing things? For instance, I wouldn't want to mention him, but I'll have to. We will have to mention the current president of Ghana, for instance. When you go and dig historically, you could see that, okay, these are people who have always, like fantasized about the Western world. They have that mentality. If a product is coming from the Western world, then that means it is the best of the best. So anything that comes from them, they do not want to even encourage or say that, okay, how can we do it better to make sure it become our best in our African way? They do not have that mentality in their head at all. So then, how do we make sure that going forward, such problems do not become part of our political leadership, a business field, and all those stuff? It comes back down to educational system. Education, education, education. How well are we pushing the agenda of our Afrocentric kind of education to these people who will become the leaders of tomorrow? That is what I can say for now.
Thank you for that. Yes, you've raised some also very important questions that maybe some of us might be thinking of answering as we go on. But Coco, come in.
Thanks, brother. Thank you, Brother Diki Mauli, Sister Eze, and Father. Really, really all interesting points. And I have so much I wanted to talk about, but I don't even know where to start, know how to put it. But what I'll try to say is thank you, Father, for raising the issue of the divide and conquer, which continues or persists today in Africa. And I would like to link that with what Eze said, that is the problem of the elite, to point out that the Africans were communalists. The Africans worked together as a community. We shared things. We had that unity of purpose as Africans. We were more clan-based and kinship-based. And then the Europeans came with a hierarchical system of individualism, and that is on which capitalism is built. So as a result, we are taught that you have to be the best everywhere to survive. And that is how capitalism operates. And individualism has come in and destroyed our oneness, umoja, and has eaten our way into our humanity, our Ubuntu. Hence, now it's every man for himself. And as they usually say, God for all. And that is how they have eaten us away gradually. We are now at the point where we are self-colonizing ourselves, because the education which they left, we are still continuing that education. And if you read Professor Mwalimu, Professor Ngudwa Chiongo, one of my favorite writers, really, a man who wrote Decolonizing Your Mind. Decolonizing the Mind is out there, is written for all of us to read and understand where our problem is. But we refuse to do that, because they came in with canon at night, and then in the middle of the day, they bound our brains with the language. They bound our brains with the soft power. But unfortunately, when I spoke about this with my brother Karanja, he showed that it was also brutal. It was brutal because you had to let go of your culture, your mother tongue. Drop that for the European one. And that is where the superiority and inferiority comes in. Because they told you, you spoke English, you're good. You spoke Sesotho in school, you're caught, they tie a board on you saying, I'm a donkey, I spoke Kikuyu, or I spoke Sizulu, I spoke Sesotho. And those who spoke English were elevated. And English became a requirement for entry into elite universities across Africa. Most of our elite then became the English speakers. And if you go into that decolonizing the mind is out there, it shows how the African literature or the African authors of literature speaking, African English speaking, decided among themselves to hold a conference in which they excluded the African languages speaking colleagues. It started to become like that, another clique. And they sort of build the English culture. And again, I said this. We said, how can we deal with elitism? We said, with the French, at least it was out there, it was known, it was written down, because the French forced their former colonies to go into the argument and write an argument, you know, on how they continue to be colonized. But with the former English colonies, what is there? It's not clear. But we live in denial. We think everything is okay on our end, but it's not. We are also under neo-colonialism at the moment. Because the leaders we have, they look like us, but they don't represent us. So this is where we need to come together. Those who are awakened, tell the others, help the others to awaken, and follow what Niger have done. Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. Look at what Niger, Bazoum is selling resources for 9 cents, uranium for 9 cents, and that's being sold for $200. $200 on the market, because he is getting a card. He's getting card. That 200 take away 9, whatever the profits that the French are making, Bazoum and his gang are making a card out of that. And what about the average Nigerian citizen? Where are they? You don't care about them. So really the question of whether we can work with people like that is very difficult. But Africans have to have their own revolution. I feel the Africans have to have their own revolution. It hasn't happened. We saw the Chinese have their own. And the Indians, after independence, what did they do? They threw away the Western clothes. They banned the Western clothes and brought back their loom machines into life and started creating the Indian clothes. And that is how the Indians got themselves out of that bondage. And their raw materials, which they were sending abroad to England, they kept them. Actually, Gandhi went and met them with their factories closing and trying to negotiate with him, saying, look at us, we don't have jobs. What are we going to feed our children? He said to them, the Indians, my dears, the Indians, think about, if you can picture yourself in that situation, think about the poor Indians. They don't have anything. Right now, I have to take those raw materials. I'm sorry, you are suffering, but the Indians are who I have to prioritize right now. So we need the leaders like that. And who among these leaders who we have things like that? I don't know. I really don't know. But I'm glad we have Senator Komishi here. We have Father here. We have people who we can talk to. It's important because we need those alliances. We need people who hear our language, who can understand how the Africans are living down there. Because the others, they enjoy the system which they've been told, they've been sold falsely that is the best system. The business leaders are making money out of that. They are okay. You don't think there's not anything wrong with it, but there is a lot wrong with capitalism. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you so much, Brother Coco. Is there anybody else who want to share something before I come to giving my last, of course, thinking also, and we close our meeting for today? I think we need to organize part 2 of elitism discussion. I think there's a lot that we need to discuss in regards to this. And I will have to table this forward and see if it will be possible. We have it some other time in the mid of either February or start of March. Anybody who has something to say before I come in to say my last remarks? Okay, silence means maybe people are not ready to say something. Okay, let me say that, and the parting question is here that if you read the paragraph 1, almost the last sentence, they say that Pareto and Mosca aim to refute Marx and to deny the possibility of socialist revolution. So is it possible to have a socialist revolution? What it says in this paragraph is that the socialist revolution was to lead to a classless society. Is it possible to attain a classless society? Classless society whereby wealth, social status, or political power will not be actually a difference between the people. And how will that classless society look like, you see? But maybe to bring it further, I'll say that elitism is an idealist position, an idealist mentality. Elitism is more embraced by the conservatives and the liberals. It is not for the progressives who think about the majority of Africans. It is not for the materialists who think about the material well-being of every individual, but for about people of their own interest. And yes, this question has been more predominant in African setups and especially political angle. Whether really do the majority count? But the minority that counts. Evidence have been shown clearly how the minority are actually benefiting. Even if you check our systems today, our political beneficiaries are almost the minority elite. But who put the minority elites, especially in political power, into power are the majority. So it is possible that the majority have the possibility and the potential to change things because they give power to the minority. And the majority end up controlling and ruling them. So comrades, elitism, in one way, is also supported by the majority poor class or the lower class, who actually the elites depend on in order to survive, to gain their material wealth, depend on in order to gain their political class, and depend on in order to get their social status. In fact, their elitism is a product of them actually exploiting the majority working class and the poor class. And therefore, it is possible that you turn things upside down. It is possible that actually the majority should have a class or should have a leadership or should have wealth that is equally distributed to all. I always refute the wealth by commonwealth, but the wealth is not common. It's only common to the Queen's family, but not to the all countries that call themselves Commonwealth. So all of the countries in the Commonwealth, the only thing they share in common is poverty, apart from, of course, Queen's family, who shares the wealth of the majority power in the nation. And as Brother Glory do say, people are poor only because some people are rich. So, comrades, this is a discussion we need to take further on whether, and we need to study clearly further. I think we'll need to come with another text on further expansion on elitism and how do we combat elitism. Because it's true that if we don't actually combat elitism properly, we may never get out of these struggles we are looking for. And therefore, they are the first struggle and the first challenge towards the attaining unification of Africa. we must do our best to combat it. So thank you very much, Professor, for joining our class today. I do appreciate your presence. I do appreciate your time and your contribution. It is not for nothing. Even a talk is not for nothing. Out of dialogue comes a solution. Therefore, let's keep talking until we find a solution. And when we get a solution, let's implement it. So thank you very much, Comrades, and I'm looking forward to have you in the next forums that are coming. And this year, we think of it to be actually the action-oriented year. And we, of course, will be continuing that classing on Thursday. I think Father Waiguru, whatever he was saying, is captured by Nkrumah in the scientism book on the introduction part of the colonial students. And those whatever you went through in seminary, I was actually meant to train you and bring you to be somebody else. And that's what they do to our military, they do to our politicians, they do their Obama Foundation, their leadership programs, their democratic whatever program. They're only doing that intentionally to continue controlling us. They're preparing for the next puppets while we are still not ready to prepare for the next liberators. So thank you very much, comrades, and I'm looking forward to engage you further on Thursday or any other day moving forward. Thank you.